see it too well, but on my little work surface here, there's a bunch of debris that's come off. I go over it with a fan brush and it knocks off any loose pieces. And then I just go down to the pile that's created and I can use those. And it works pretty good. They're $2 at Target, and I can put that up too if you want.
I have a question.
Yes.
Do you seal that with something after you apply it to your rolling stock?
That's a great question. I'm really glad you asked that. No, I never seal it. I've never sealed a thing.
Oh.
And it really doesn't come off. I handle these cars a lot, putting them in and out of the cases and going back and forth to the North County Model Railroad Society that I belong to up in Oceanside. The stuff just doesn't come off. It sticks really well. And if it were to come off, then I just touch it up again. So anyway, I've had good luck with it and been doing this for a long time, and happy to share with people.
This is just, I've got just two little projects that I've been working on. This is I finally have power on my layout. And this is a kit-bashed Walthers power plant. If anybody's ever done one of these, normally there's just one transformer, and I stuck a second transformer in there. And then I made the mistake of putting this on the NMRA Facebook group site. And there happened to be a couple guys that worked in industrial, for industrial electrical plants. And they said that, I guess they basically implied that if I actually ran electricity through this entire thing would blow up the way that I have it set up. But nobody else knows that, so I don't really care. One of the main alterations I made from the regular, anytime I start a project, and especially when I'm about to paint it, I'm always kind of curious, you know, I don't try to guess too much what the appropriate colors are. And so I go on, I do a Google search for that item, and I did a Google search on these industrial transformers, and the Walthers instruction didn't, and even their picture doesn't see all these little black, these are ceramic insulators, I think. These weren't black as I recall in the Walthers one, but when I looked on the real thing, they were all black. So I painted those all black, and then I added some wiring to everything too, with little mini drills. I drilled holes. I just used regular single cord copper wire, and that let me drill little holes in the middle of these insulators so I could stick a piece of the wire in there with some super glue, and that helped out on that as well. And then building the fence, if anybody's built a fence before, that's not easy, but it wasn't, I managed to wade through it all. I'm not going to go through all the detail on building a fence. Ryan, do I still have a minute or two?
You do. You have 2 minutes.
Oh, I have 2 minutes. Okay.
Well, I keep forgetting to start the timer, but yeah, about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. And then I have, here's another shot of it. And I'm going to do some more detailing on this, put some people in here and that sort of thing. Dick Roberts on a practice session mentioned that I don't have any barbed wire on this, and the barbed wire they give you is kind of leans out, and I'm doing the 50s, and I don't recall much of that in the 50s, though it probably existed. And besides, in the 50s, people didn't sue each other as much. So if a little kid crawled in there and got fried, you know, the electrical company, you know, it wasn't that concerned. So I'll put some signs though. Hopefully the kids can read. And then this is my other project. I did a fuel depot. To the right here, this is a rip car facility where they repair and place freight cars. And right here is the fuel depot. Back here is the back here is the, you know, where they keep product and that sort of thing. They're loading up a truck there. And
30
there's a man
seconds.
right here getting ready to fill up this truck right here. And then I weathered these with pan pastels. Pete would be proud of me for that. And I added, you know, I'm not afraid to kit bash some stuff. So like the base was too big. I cut the base down. I did the same thing on that electrical plant. And then added a few, you'd have to see it from the top. Let's see if I got another picture of this. I
Got
added
about 10 seconds, Tim.
okay, I added some piping and that sort of thing. And that's it.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. Hi, everybody. See if I can get the share started. Searchlight fan, and I was very happy to see searchlights on Tim's layout. So way to go, Tim. Prototype has go grand. I've got the control electronics all over the layout. From Tam Valley with signal board add-on. It's all my design, by the way. So that's in place. With working signals, ABS, AD. The years from scenery and signals, so I had to figure out how can I get signals working, and I thought it might be fun to design some spatial mounts, searchlight signal boards that I designed for N scale, and look like on them. I've used black solder mask and boards with white silk screen, so you sort of get the black target, and the you can see the signal box. That part of where the connectors come in, that would be below ground, so you can sort of see the relay box. The most interesting thing might be the LEDs. That's an extreme close-up. The grid, so those 50,000 by 50, 4 turns to connect on those. That takes a little practice and patience to do. But the interesting thing about particular LEDs, from the chart, on the left are the recommended wavelengths for green, yellow, and red. And in the middle, you'll see what common LEDs have. And this really jump way too green. Common green signal color on railroads is really shifted well towards the blue. And I found they've got very accurate green for railroads, so I got excited and did this project so I could use them, and this is what they look like. Very, very close to prototype, and as you'll see in a minute. So there's working LEDs. It would be mounted on if there was fascia. We'll get fascia installed, but that's the tracks fairly close to where they would be, and this one is showing that the turnout at Fox Junction is set to the passing track one block. Side of a real GRS searchlight looks like. You'll see there's 3 colored lenses, and on the left is the green one. How blue it is by looking here. The reason I'm showing you this is that the red's in the middle. Certainly, mechanisms are designed so that if the mechanism failed, gravity would end up moving the red lens or rondelle in front of the lamp. There's no way to get from the yellow to without going to red. And if you're a real searchlight efficient, you want to see what's known as a flash. And it takes some electronics and some software to do that, but of course I've done all the work in the quad LN board, and if this video plays, hopefully you'll see, and maybe not. Shot is See if we can play. Okay, so let's see if we can play this video. If you flash and switch to green, hope that came through. Anyway, that was my little project in searchlights.
You know, in this downtime period, I've found, as you probably all have, that there's extra time to spend modeling. And what I did, what I thought I would just present today is some of the stuff that I've been doing relative to locomotives and kit bashing. These are 6 of my primary locomotives. I have two lines. The Pudding River Lumber Company and the Oregon, California, and Western are my 2 fantasy lines that I modeled to. And I'm a ON30 modeler. I don't have a layout. You know, I engage our California South Coast modular group periodically at shows and whatnot, and that's basically where I get to run trains. So I do a lot of modeling and building of structures and locomotives, but not much running, sadly. So I just thought I'd show you some of the kit bashing that I've done recently and over the years. The locomotive in the upper right is, these are all Bachmann locomotives, and they've been kit bashed and modified pretty extensively in order to achieve the look that I want. I like a pretty weathered and bashed look about my locomotives and rolling stock. The one in the upper right I just finished a couple days ago. It's a Climax locomotive. It has a third truck tender on it. It's Backwoods Miniatures tender, a gypsy winch on the front, and a lot of detailing added. I also tend to pull out all of the electronics on Bachmann locomotives and replace it with Tsunami and Keep Alives and whatnot. And I did that on this locomotive as well. The locomotive in the upper center is a Mantua chassis and drive kit or drive assembly with a modified frame on top of it. Really a fun little exercise. It's pretty much the only oil burner I have in my consist of locomotives. Upper left is a Bachmann locomotive, or what's left of a Bachmann locomotive. This was started by Lynn Austin. For those of you who may know who he was, he put a Climax boiler on a Bachmann Shea frame. And so this is a pretty robust Shea. I changed out the steel cab, redid the tender, the water portion of it, raised it up, and redid the entire boiler assembly along with a bunch of detailing. The bottom 3 are all Bachmann locomotives. This is a kind of a standard Shea with a third truck added to it. The lower left is a 2662 articulated that I've had for quite a while. It's one of my first kit bash locomotives. A lot of fun to do. Again, all the electronics. This has a mega bass speaker in it, as well as the Climax locomotive, and the sound is just awesome that comes out of those speakers. They're pretty big though, so they require a lot of space to be housed. And then this is a mogul that I did. It's a Bachmann mogul. It's a dead rail mogul, and Pete first got me introduced to dead rail, and I haven't dove into it full tilt, but dabbling in it, and I really enjoy running that locomotive. The only downside is sound. I find that the sound coming out of my normalized Tsunami locomotives is pretty awesome. I did like what Pete said about weathering. I weather everything extensively, and I use I basically paint the locomotives a base paint color. Custom colors, these are all a little bit different. The base coat on this one is different than the base coat on this one. But I washed the Thanks. I washed the locomotives with a series of rust or colored washes to kind of tone down the black into a more rusted or toned down color. And then I use powders. I use Bragdon powders. Pen pastels are good too, but I literally use the same technique that Pete does in doing powders. I'll go over the locomotive after I've done the washes with a dull coat, and then run powders over that. And pretty much I don't overspray the powders at all. So open to questions.
Yes, there's a couple of questions in the chat. Let's see how we do here. Trudy asks, what sound card did you use in the climax?
These are, they're all Tsunamis. It's a TSU 1100, I think, in most of these. I think in the climax, I put in an economy unit just because I had it. So it's not, I don't keep the Bachmann electronics. I take it out and replace it, basically.
Pete's asking, what brand of paint do you like for your work?
I get asked that all the time.
Yeah.
I go down to Michael's, I buy acrylic paints off the shelf, and I use those. I don't use anything special.
I like those too.
Yeah, like Americana, or what's the other one? There's some craft. They're just acrylic craft paints, and they seem to hold up really, really well. I've never had any problems with them. Well, I do tear my locomotives down and prime them, and then paint them with an airbrush. So it has a little bit of time involved in doing that.
And okay, oh, it moved. There we go. Tim asks, is the Mega Bass speaker 8 ohm and the manufacturer?
Yeah. I've used everything. I think in this locomotive, the one in the center, the 2662, I used a sugar cube speaker because that's all that would fit in the tender unit here. But
Pete asked,
I've used different.
I'm sorry.
I've used different types of speakers.
Pete is asking, what do you thin the paint with?
I have a special mix. It's alcohol. It's an extender that keeps the paint from drying too fast, and distilled water. So I'd have to look it up. I can put it in the chat later on today as what the percentages are.
That's a good idea. And Mike wants to know, when you kit bash, are you making major structural changes or small changes?
It depends. I would say this one had pretty significant, the Lynn Austin Shea is what I call it. That one had major structural changes. Basically, the frame and the trucks is all that's, and the tender are all that was part of the original Shea. Everything else is rebuilt.
All right. Thank you, Kevin.
This is a virtual tour of the Nevada County Railroad. My name is Dick Roberts. I've been working on this layout for a while, and so we're going to take a look at it, give you some basic background information. It's HO scale. It's housed in a purpose-built room, which is actually a 4-car garage cut in half. The design is a mushroom concept that has 2 levels, but they're not visible simultaneously. I'll explain some of that later. And in my case, they're connected by an elevator. This is my 3rd iteration of the Nevada County Railroad. This one began in 1998 when we moved down here to San Diego area and finished building the house. It's modeled after the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad, and it includes many of the prototype scenes and structures from that railroad. The era is circa 1920, and I'll explain why that happened. but it's not a narrow gauge railroad. I like to emphasize that. A while back, we did an article in the Mail Hook about my layout, and I explained some of my givens and druthers in designing the layout. So some of that I may not touch on today. Anyway, so come on in. This is the entry to the layout room. This is a fold down bridge. We'll get to that later, but we're gonna, oops. I missed a slide here somewhere. What happened? Anyway, this is a mushroom design. Basically, and this is a picture that is courtesy of Roger Gredvig. This was early on in the construction of the layout. This is the upper level up here. This is the upper level scenery. This is the lower level, or the upper level front edge is along here. The lower level is the backdrop scenery here, and then the lower level front edge is here. And if you look at this in a cross section, what we look at on the upper level was the Coleman area with the backdrop and the front edge. And then we looked at the Chicago Park is underneath with the scenery and the backdrop. So this gives you an idea of how a mushroom design comes together. The upper portion is viewed from an elevated floor, and the lower level is viewed from the room floor. And it takes some creative bench work. Those of you that built layouts know all about that. So this is a map of the prototype. It ran from Colfax to, in California, Colfax to Nevada City. So I've modeled various scenes from Colfax, Oilville, the Bear River Bridge, Chicago Park, Coleman's, Peardale, Union Hill, Grass Valley, Glenbrook, Town Top, Gold Flat, and Nevada City. There's some scenes on the layout that are just modeler's license because I like them, and one of them is the logging operations at Kits, so we'll see. And also the town of North San Juan is a fictitious extension of the railroad that happened because there was some space out there and I couldn't see it going to waste. So we begin in Colfax. This is where the Nevada County narrow gauge met the Southern Pacific. This is the Pacific Fruit Exchange building. This is a scratch-built structure that is reminiscent of many structures that are still existent up at Colfax, but they've been converted primarily to restaurants, etc. This is the yard in Colfax. The two tracks on the right-hand side of the picture are the Nevada County tracks, and these tracks are interchange tracks for the Southern Pacific. This is a dummy track that represents the Southern Pacific main line through Colfax. This is the depot at Colfax, the station. This structure is actually still standing. It's now a museum. I had the advantage of being able to obtain plans from them, the restoration plans. So this model is built to the plans that they used to restore the original station. As we, I in the Colfax warehouse. And this is what hides underneath Colfax when nobody's looking. This is my workbench. So it's usually not this clean, but anyway. As we depart Colfax, we come to Oilville. Oilville was a location where the Nevada County had a turntable and a fueling siding spur. The turntable was all of them on the layout or on the railroad were Armstrong turntables. So these were positioned manually by the train crews. And you'll notice that since the circa era is 1920, we didn't worry about the EPA at the time. And there's some wonderful photographs, historical photographs of this oil crud that runs all the way down the hill from their fueling spur. So I had to model that just to, so I wouldn't get in trouble with the EPA. We travel out of Oilville through the Bear River Spur and onto the Bear River Bridge. This is one of the signature structures on the layout. It's approximately 75% scale of the actual bridge. It's basically a kit bash. The towers themselves are from Micro Engineering with their extension kits added to get a 5-story tower for the 2 main towers. The arms, the cantilever arms here are scratch built from Grant Line, not Grant Line. I forgot who does the girder parts now. Anyway, and the rest of the bridge is all Micro Engineering parts. Then the deck is all scratch built, and all the track on the layout is hand laid, code 70, except for the staging yards, which were done with flex track. As we cross the bridge, we come into Chicago Park. Again, Chicago Park was a small siding. Most of the track arrangements are based on prototype track plans. The station at Chicago Park and the water tank are both scratch built. The water tank actually has an operating spout. Folks that have operated on my layout know you have to stop. This is the only required water stop on the layout outside of Grass Valley. So you have to stop here for water. So we depart out of Chicago Park. We'll come through this opening right here. We'll pass this through this overpass and tunnel. This was originally, when I started to work on the layout, this was originally going to be an open scene, but there was a lot of discussion in the hobby literature about blobs at the end of peninsulas and how you disguise them and all that. So I decided I would close it off, which I did over here. So I made the scene to look like there was a highway overpass, and there's light behind the overpass tunnel to simulate more daylight on the other side of the tunnel. But we come out on this side into the logging area of Kits. And again, this is Kits was actually a family company. They did have a logging operation, but they didn't have a direct connection to the Nevada County main line. But I thought I would want to operate some logging trains, and so I designed this as a connection directly to the main line of the Nevada County Railroad. Back here we have a tunnel approach to the elevator, and what you see right here is actually the safety door, the safety gate. When the elevator is out of position, this gate drops down by gravity so that you can't run a train off the end of the track. Many people have asked me why I didn't have some kind of electrical device that shuts off the power to the rails. And one reason is if you're backing a train, you can back 4 cars off the end of the track before the engine runs out of power, so before it runs into the dead track. And the other problem that I had, and it came up on the elevator, is that if you're running keep alives, as I do with all of my, and all the locomotives have soundtracks and keep alives, or current keeper device electronics in them. When they back power here, but the train won't stop. The keep alive or the current keeper will keep it running. So this little device right here is from our friends at Tam Valley, and it's basically it's one of his standard devices that he's modified. But what it does is it reads the addresses. It shuts down the power to the track, or it shuts down the engine, not the power, by engine number. So the train will come on the elevator. This will sense, rather than shut off the track power, it senses the presence of the elevator. As soon as it trips the other sensor at the other end, this thing will shut down. It sends a 0 speed signal to that locomotive, and that stops the train. And you can see if we were coming in this direction, you'd see a green signal and the train would exit here. But this is the elevator in the up position. This is the bottom side of the elevator. This is the drive, the new drive system that I installed probably about 6 years ago, 7 years ago maybe. And our presenter today, Robin Becker, has helped me a lot with all this stuff you see down here that I don't understand. So anyway, this is a servo. This is an actuator, linear actuator that's driven up and down, and it positions the elevator. And the elevator travel here is about 24 inches. And it drives up. This is the elevator in the up position, ready to exit. We see again the green signal here indicating that the elevator has stopped, the track power is back on, and we're all ready to go. As we come off of the elevator through the other portal there, we come onto the main line here at Coleman. Coleman is the site of was the site of a sawmill that was owned by the Coleman brothers, who were also partners in the original Nevada County Narrow Gauge Railroad. Initially, I wasn't going to build a sawmill because I knew it would be real complicated and it was going to be right at the edge of the layout, but I finally got up the nerve to do it and had the time. So this is overall view of the sawmill site. And these tent cabins are from my friend, late Burton Maxwell. He did an article on these. He cut these out of wood blocks and covers them with tissue paper, and they look just like tent cabins. They're really cool. Anyway, this is more detail of the sawmill. Again, this is scratch built, primarily styrene and wood. Some metal parts in here. And I built, I should back that up just a second here. The sawmill is from a book that I bought many years ago called Sawmill Modeling by Morgan Griffiths. And he had a plan in the book, and I pretty much followed the plan and then modified it a little bit to fit my space. And in this mill operation, it's a steam-powered mill with a belt drive system. This steam engine is the only kit portion. This is the only thing that's not scratch built. All of the pulleys that you see here that are in the drive belt system are made from styrene tubing, and the insert inside is made from watch gear. I happened to find these at Micromark. They sell a box of them for like, I forgot what it was, $30 or $40, and I picked through all the gears. And anyway, so I found enough gears with a spoke on them that I could make the pulleys for the drive system. And the belt is made from a real fine paper called watch paper that's stained. So all these belts are made from watch paper. As we leave Coleman, we come around the corner to Peardale. And again, Peardale Station is scratch built. This is an example of the barbed wire fence that I do. I came up with a method for doing barbed wire, and I'll show that to you in a minute when we get around the corner past Grass Valley. But again, this is a scratch built structure. Both of these are. This is based on published plans that were in Railroad Model Craftsman, in fact. So, some of you may know Herman Darr. He's done a lot of work for Model Craftsman. He's also very active in the Nevada County Narrow Gauge Museum up in Nevada City. But he did the plans. So out of Peardale, we come to Union Hill. Union Hill is the largest mine and stamp mill on the layout. It's one of three actual mill structures on the layout. But the part of the history that I made up was that all of the mills were steam powered, but they were converted to oil-fired boilers. And, so we have an excuse for parking tank cars here now, unloading the tank cars. This is a little pump house in the back and overhead light and that kind of thing. But so anyway, I like the idea of having the oil-fired boilers in the mills. So as we leave Union Hill, we come to Grass Valley. This Grass Valley and the railroad in general, a lot of its business was hauling fruit during season. And this is referred to as an ice house, but it was just a packing house, very typical of the time. Not to be sexist, but most of the people who worked in here were women. They packed the boxes. If you look at historical photos of packing houses of the era, you'll see they're primarily female employees that are doing the work. And this is some of the detailed shots from inside the packing house. And from the packing house around the corner, we come to the Kidder Mansion. The Kidder Mansion is also scratch built and is one of the projects that I submitted for my AP program. This mansion was actually the home of the superintendent, John Kidder. That's where the name came from. What we don't know is where he got all the money to build it. There's a lot of speculation there. But anyway, it was a real nice house until it burned down in the early 60s, I think it was. So Grass Valley Yard, this is laid out exactly aside from the proportions, but the tracks are arranged just as they were in Grass Valley. This is a through track through the engine house and machine shop that was there. This is a small foundry that was in the back, and obviously the depot. This is a supply building that was on the side, and this is the track out of town. Again, there's a second turntable. This is a A-frame turntable, but it's also Armstrong. So they're all manually powered. As we leave Grass Valley, we come to this duck under or walk under. The clearance here is about 6'3" and this is one of the basic design elements of a mushroom style layout. What we see here is, aside from this is the staging, I'll talk about that later, but when you get up to this upper floor, you can only see these scenes that are at eye level. There's actually another scene on the back side of this, which is Chicago Park. But it's blocked because of the design, the structure, as I explained earlier. But anyway, so we have this elevated floor, handrails for all us old folks that need it to get up and downstairs. And as we leave Grass Valley, we come to Glenbrook. Again, Glenbrook is a location of one of the other stamp mills on the layout, the actual structure. This is the Idaho-Maryland mine. It's not modeled, but the powder house is. This is something that I thought was kind of unique. They would modify a cave. They would brick in or stone in the front of a cave and use it as a bunker for the dynamite, for explosives. In this particular location, I surrounded it with an 8-foot barbed wire fence. And this is a close-up. This is my name to claim to fame, if you will. It's barbs on the barbed wire. And I do that by running, this is fishing line that I run through a gear that presses indentations into the fishing line, and it creates barbs. So I have probably several 100 feet of this strung around on my layout. And this location is also guarded by a movable gate, so we can move the gate and bring cars in to unload the dynamite and then be done with it. So as we leave Glenbrook, we come to Town Talk. This is one of 2 tunnels that were on the prototype. I didn't model the other one on this layout, but it's rather significant, and one of its more significant features is it's got a trolley line that runs over the top of it. This trolley line actually connected 2 of the major cities, Grass Valley and Nevada City, and it was established in the early late 1990 or 1900s. 1919. I'll get it out yet. Anyway, so this building is a kit that I cut down to fit it up against the backdrop, and this over here is a scratch-built structure that was built from the photograph of this scene. And this tunnel was a problem for many years. The first year it was in service, they had a collapse during the winter, and it seemed like it collapsed every winter after that. So as we leave Town Talk, we come to this location called the Gold Flat Trestle. This is a contribution from my friend Dick Trotter. He got tired of running trains over the plywood that used to be here. And he asked me one day what I was going to do, what I was supposed to put in there. And I said, well, it's supposed to be a trestle. And I had the picture up on the valance. And he said, is that what it looks like? I said, yeah. He said, so he came over and did some drawings, and I gave him some rail, and he provided all the wood and built the trestle for me. And it came out really nice. So, but I did the barbed wire. I did all the fencing. And from there, we come into Nevada City. Nevada City was the end of the line for the prototype. This is the station. The track arrangement is, again, in accordance with the prototype. We see the turntable in the back here. This is another A-frame Armstrong turntable. Again, scratch built. But being the model railroader that I am, and recognize that I had another 12 inches of space along this wall over here, I decided to extend from Nevada City over to North San Juan. So this location, this is where we came into the room, the opening, and this folds down so I can get in and out of the room easily when I'm working on it. But this is the operating location for the bridge. And across the bridge, we come to North San Juan, and the Lee Compton mine. This again is the third mine structure on the layout. And stockyard, which is all scratch built from styrene, except for the cows. Well, the cows are probably styrene, but I didn't scratch build them. So. And the miner's foundry, and this area has become quite a interesting little switching area in itself. And I can come out here and run trains from Nevada City over to North San Juan and entertain myself for about an hour for just a couple of cars. So anyway, that's the actual end of the model layout. But again, this is, so I wanted to talk about the vertical staging. That originally the staging tracks here were just these 4 tracks, but I expanded it by building the second level, and I drive this with an elevator, and this is the location that it's in. It's underneath, as you come out of the walk under from Grass Valley, this is on your left-hand side. This is a connection from Colfax to the staging area that folds down. So these 2 areas, the upper level is Sacramento and the lower level is Reno, and we move them up and down with another linear actuator. Depending on where you need to put cars or where you need to get them from. So there you have the Nevada County Railroad.
Thank you, Dick.
You're welcome.
I'm going to look for questions.
Okay.
Trudy, did you? Oh, there we go. Sorry. Okay. Trudy, did you have a question about a paper question?
Yes. Am I unmuted?
Yes, you are. Well, yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, but I didn't get one of the words you said, that you made the bands for the sawmill. Watch paper?
Yeah, watch paper.
My watch didn't come wrapped in paper.
I have no idea where you buy watch paper now. It's a jeweler's, you might try a jeweler's supply house. What it is the jewelers use it for a work surface, and it comes in a box, at least what I have, is a box that's about 3 inches square. It's a real thin tissue, but it's lintless. So, you know, and it takes stain and paint real nicely, but it holds, you know, it's real strong. It's not like regular tissue that would come apart in the water. So
Cool.
But I have a whole box. If you want some, I'd be glad to give some to you. Because it's probably like a 20 lifetime supply.
Hey, I have a question.
Okay.
Do you lay your own track?
Yeah, hand laid track.
Wow. And can you tell us about your the part of your track where it opens up so you can walk through, and then you have to
Oh, the lift up sections?
Yes. How do you
Yeah.
how do you connect, whenever you lift it down so trains can run over it, how do you make that work so that trains don't
Well,
derail?
it's, people make that a lot more complicated than they really need to, because one end of any kind of a lift up device is going to have a hinge on one end. So any electrical wiring that you need, you run from the end that's got the hinge on it, and you automatically have the track connected. It's connected all the time. So there's no electrical problem with that. But on the one lift up that's on the doorway, the entryway, I hold that in place with a window latch. One of those old-fashioned turn window latches that locks the window frame. And what that does is it automatically adjusts, because if you've ever looked at it, it has a slight taper to it. So you can tension it and keep the tension all the time. You don't have to adjust anything, as it swells and shrinks with weather and all that kind of stuff.
So whenever you lower that, I guess, bridge, for lack of a better term, do the tracks line up? Is it set so the tracks just line up, or do you have to have something like a track joiner?
No, there's no track joiner. The way to design that is you have an alignment pin, and you do all the bench work and the alignment, and you get the hinge thing working so it folds up and down and all that. And when you get all that done and you have it consistent, then you lay the track across it. And once you get to the track, you just cut a gap in the track, and it's free to move. And you do that at both ends of the bridge. It's relatively simple.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you so much. I've always wondered how that worked.
You're welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Fowler, and I'm going to share with you my experience with Woodland Scenic's water products. Over the years, I've tried different types of water techniques. I've used glass, frosted glass, resin, matte medium, the old Woodland Scenic's products, the pellets, if you remember those. And I was never really happy with the final effects. And then a while back, I decided to give Woodland Scenic's another try, and they've got a different type of water product out now, and I was really happy with the results of it, and I wanted to share that with you today. As you know, there's lots of different kinds of water out there. There's everything from puddles to oceans, and depending on what you want to do on your layout makes a difference on how you're going to do your water. The color of water outside comes from two basic sources. One is light, and the other is whatever's in that water. You've seen an algae bloom before. You've seen, like out on the ocean, sometimes it looks green, sometimes it looks blue. Up near the coastline, it's more transparent. You can see the sand and rock underneath the water surface there. If you've ever been up to Lake Tahoe, that water is very clear. You can see that easily. The other thing about water is it's typically not at or above track level. So you need to adjust your terrain so that it is somewhat below that. And we're going to talk about that a little bit too. I think we'll start by introducing some of the product here. I'm going to hand the screen over to Ryan. We'll start with the undercoat.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, there we are.
This is what they call the water undercoat colors. They don't tell you on the package what this is, but I'm guessing it's a water-based acrylic. The good thing about these products are that they blend really nice. And the other thing I want to not forget to mention is for every step that you do with this water system, you have to give it 24 hours to dry before you go to the next step. That's a really important thing to remember. So I got 4 basic colors. I got yellow, olive drab, hunter green, and deep blue. Deep blue being the deepest part of the water, and then the yellow silt being up near the shoreline. And I thought these other colors would help blend it together. So, and then they also make the water, the gloss coat that goes on top of that. And the important thing about this product is you do not shake it or use a hot gun or anything on it. But if you shake it, you'll get bubbles, and then it's difficult to clear those bubbles out. They also make a water ripple product. It's like a gel that goes on top, and it can be done in moderation, or if you want raging rivers and that kind of things, you can have that too, or surf. They make a whitewater highlight to so that you can highlight that with like white foam. And then the last thing I picked up was something called Dust Dabber. And you can use this on anything on the layout. And it basically, it kind of looks like slime. But it's really good for cleaning dust off the layout. You can see it's just kind of, you break off a piece of that and just dab it around on the layout. It'll clean out the dust off anything you've got. So that's the basic introduction to the products. And what I'd like to do now is just kind of go through the process with you. And I'm going to, I picked these up at, these little plaques up at Dollar Tree. They're $1 a piece, obviously. So I didn't want to spend a lot of money. So here's the, we start with the beach area here. I'm just going to get some paint on here and just start putting it on. Don't be afraid of this. It's fun. It's good to practice with it before you put it on your layout where you're going to do it, but don't be afraid of it. It's really a lot of fun to work with. And I think it's water soluble. At least that's how I've been cleaning my brush. And then from there you go to the next color, which is the olive drab. I've had these paints for probably over 2 years, and I've still got a lot of it left. So here's the olive drab going on now. And I primered these boards because they're just hardwood. I wasn't sure how porous they would be, but in doing so, when I put it on the layout itself, I just went directly onto masonite, the smooth side of the masonite, and that just kind of worked just fine. I didn't have to primer the masonite. So as you can see, I'm blending. The colors are starting to change a little bit now. Now I'm going into the hunter green. Got that coming in now, getting into some of the deeper water. And the fourth color, the final color, is the deep blue. They make more than 4 colors. You can choose whatever colors you like depending on what you're modeling. I would suggest if you're going to model water that you go out and actually look at water or get some photos either on the internet or in a book that shows the area that you're trying to model. I'm obviously doing straight lines here, but you'd want to make your water area undulating so it's not just straight lines. So I'm going to try and save some time here rather than continue to blend. I want to show you what it looks like when it's done. And as you can see, we start here with the shoreline. It gets a little deeper, and then into the center here. This is your deepest part of the water. So when you get all done blending that, it comes together very nicely and it gives you a really good effect. Set the paint out of the way here real quick and go to the next step. So we've let this sit for 24 hours. Get them all out of the way. One more. Okay. Then we go to the next step, which is the clear fluid. Remember, don't shake this. You don't want bubbles in it. I've had these products, like I said, for over 2 years. I've used them several times on the layout. I'm just going to gently pour this out.
What is this one?
This is the realistic water. This is the gloss coat, for lack of a better explanation. And it looks milky right now, but once we get it set up, and I'm just going to gently spread it out over this board. So you can just see I'm gently working it. I'm trying not to create any bubbles out of it, but I'm going to try and cover my entire surface here and move it out. As you can see, I'm going to cut a little tiny bubbles, but that's not a problem.
So Don, you put that on pretty thick?
I You know, when it's dry, it's about a 1/16 of an inch. I put a little bit extra on here today. You can control how much you put out there and just spread it around. So now you can see it kind of mutes the effect of the paint underneath. And that's a nice feature that it does. I'm going to set this aside now. It's wet. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like when it's dry. And there it is. You might get a little reflection there. I'll try to not get your reflection, but you can see it mutes the paint even further. And you can go from the light end as it gets into the deep portion in the middle. So these two sides of the shoreline give you an idea what that looks like.
Right over here, so it's not underneath the lamp.
That takes 24 hours to dry too?
Every step, 24 hours. Yeah. It's kind of like gremlins. You know, you don't feed them after midnight. You don't get them wet. You don't expose them to light. And then the next step, oops, I set that aside. The next step, so this has been dried 24 hours to get the ripples out. We use a stippling brush. This is kind of like a gel. So you just get some of that going and don't be shy. Just kind of start stippling it out. Now on N scale, I don't need a lot of ripple. HO and O scale, you want more ripples. You can build this up in layers, 24 hours to a coat. But you can see I'm just spreading that all around. It looks kind of goofy right now.
And then do you use soft or stiff bristle brushes, Don?
This one's soft. You could use a stiff one if you want. The soft one's working pretty good for me. So that's kind of the effect you're getting with that. I'm going to set this aside. Now, if you get bubbles, by the way, the easy way to deal with bubbles is with either a bamboo skewer or just a toothpick. You just come in here and just slide these bubbles. If you can't pop them, just move them out to the edge. You get them all out. I don't have too many bubbles on this. Just move them out to the edge, and that'll get rid of them. They'll dissipate and go away. And you're going to cover the edge of that anyway with some ground cover. And that's another thing. Don't put your ground cover on until after this is all done and set up. And use some white glue to put your ground cover along the coastline. You'll be a lot happier with that. So here's what this looks like when it's dry. And again, this is just a light application of this rippling effect. So basically 3 days, I put the paint on, let it set 24 hours, put the gloss coat on, let it sit 24 hours, then put the ripples on, let it sit 24 hours. And then you're ready to move on with your scenery. That's about everything.
Okay, I have a question about the ripples. I've seen some ripples on layouts where the ripples look like they have a white, like a white foam, where the water breaks. Do you have that?
That's what this is for.
Let me get you. There we are.
The white water, you just dry brush that on the area where you want that, and then that gives you the foam that you're looking for. So I think that's enough to explain the process. I'd like to show you some of the applications on the layout now. Let's go over here.
Covering the camera so I don't make you dizzy.
Oh, and then if you're gonna embed rocks in your water, do you do that at the clear coat stage?
There's two ways to do that. One is to do it before you start. You can do it at any point you want. If you've got a flat bottom rock, you can just set it right on top. If you want to embed it, then I would put it on after the paint, but before the gloss coat. Brian's kind of showing you some different views of my first effort with this. As you can see, the coloration from the shoreline down into the deep portions of the water went really well. I was really pleased with that result. I put some sandbars in here to add some interest. The other thing you'll see is that I cut out of the bench work here. The plywood is raised here, and this is just a 1/4 inch sheet of masonite, gloss side up, shiny side up, and I applied the paint directly to that. And then I laid my track and got everything done to operate the layout. Then I went back to do the water effects. This is built up with foam. Use whatever kind of foam you like. And then these are castings I just colored and put in. And then along the shoreline, I just used white glue, and then I put my ground cover on there and added some plants and that kind of thing. And that way you're not, you've got some 3-dimensional terrain. And it comes out pretty nice. I'd like to show you another section on the layout now. We're going to walk to the next section.
You're just in the tunnel in the train, that's all. Yeah,
Okay, now here's the next section. This one I just did recently. If you go to the outside edge, go out to the side here where they can see the edge of the board. As you can see, that's just 1/4-inch masonite that I have screwed into the underside of the benchwork. Show them this end right here. Okay. You see, this is where I cut into the benchwork. I cut back and just screwed that in, and then
I'm gonna find it here. Whee!
find it a little more.
Sorry about
A
that.
little more. There
we go.
So there's the side. That's the actual benchwork right here, and then that's where I cut in. I cut I cut 1 foot back and all the way across. About a 3 or 4 foot section here, and you can see again the track work is up here. This is all done with foam and then painted and ground cover, rock castings, and then the ground cover on top of that. You can see the coloration in the water there. Like the boaters, the rafters I've got here, those I just glued on after everything was dry. If you want a sunken hull, you can either sand down the hull or you can put it in before you put the water effect on. Woodland Scenics also makes a deep water application. I haven't tried that, but I saw that. If you go on their website, they've got all kinds of product and video demos. So if you want more information, that's a good place to go for information. We got some deer down here watching the rafters approach.
Trying to get a good focus on here. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to get an overview and then we have another location to look at.
And then we have a couple questions if you're ready.
Not yet.
Okay, all right.
More thing to show.
Okay.
Okay, we're almost done here. This was an afterthought. This, if you've already got your layout done, but you still would like to put in a little bridge, I came across this bridge in a box of stuff I had, and I thought it was pretty cool. So I cut the bridge in half, basically, and then I used a Dremel router and just kind of routed things out. And then I added some putty and some ground cover. Remember, you have to have a source for when you have a flash flood come through here, because this is a dry wash. But you could put your water effect in here as well. And then down in this area under the bridge, I painted that black so it looked like it would go all the way through to the other side. Obviously it doesn't, but it gives a good effect. So I just wanted to show you a couple different ways to change up your terrain and have fun with that water. But you play with it a little bit. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. You probably do as good or better than I did. I can take questions now if you like.
Okay, so when you put a rock in there, does the material creep up on the rocks, or does it kind of just?
I haven't had that experience, but I would be real sparing when you move that gloss up to it. I just wouldn't go overboard with that.
And then the other question is, let's see. Oh, now I believe I'm asking the question right. Before you put the gloss coat on, do you seal the paint first with anything? Nope. With a caulk seal? Oh, nothing. Okay. So the gloss coat seals it, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah. And if you want it just glossy, like little ponds without ripples, I mean, you can be done at that stage if you don't want to put ripples on. But it's for whatever you want to do. Like I said, I would research what you want to accomplish. Look for some prototype photos and coloration and terrain, and then go ahead and model that. And don't be afraid, even if you already got your layout built, you want to add a water feature, so what? Cut into it and do it. If you don't like it, you do it over.
Okay, and then what's the maximum depth can you make your water with that, I guess, the gloss coat?
Let's go back over there, Ryan.
Okay.
I'm just going to go face on to it. I'm going to show you right here. Here's the 1/4-inch. Here's the 1/4-inch masonite. So you can see that's only about a 1/16 of an inch thick, and that's as thick as I've done it. You can buy the thicker stuff, and it'll go as deep as you want, but you got to do it in layers.
Okay, it's a little hard to hear, but you're saying you can make it pretty thin, or is that what you're saying? Or you can make it thick if you want, or I mean, you have the option to do what you want?
You can, you know, it's 24 hours per coat, but I thought that one coating was enough.
Okay. It's kind of hard to hear you for some reason.
Probably because I'm covering the speaker.
How's
okay,
that? Can you hear me?
Okay,
Hear me
so
better?
Sorry, that's my fault.
that's good. Hey, can I ask one more question? This is my own question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So say if you have a layout and you're going to add a pond or a stream, then you cut out, like how do you merge the lake to the ground, a surrounding ground? Do you just kind of?
It depends on what you're trying to model.
Yeah.
As you can see, we've got, this is down a ravine a little bit here, and this is a natural terrain element where the water has cut through the ground. It may have been higher at some point, but the water has cut through the ground, and now it's down at this level over the years. So, and again, just to blend it, I use a little white glue and I put the ground cover right up on the shoreline there.
Okay, so you put the lake down, and then you bring the dirt coming over it to finish it off, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
You do the pond first, then the ground.
Yeah, you'll be real unhappy if you do the ground cover first, because that's going to get into that water effect.
Okay.